My brother bought a villa with my money, but then IRS-CI agents' cars suddenly appeared at the gate. I watched from the guest house window as 6 federal vehicles rolled up the driveway like a slow-motion nightmare. My hands were shaking so hard I dropped my coffee mug on the marble floor. I had no idea that trusting my own brother with my life savings would end with me standing in handcuffs next to him, screaming that I didn't know anything. I need to start this by telling you who I was before all of this happened, because the person writing this post right now is not the same woman who wired $412,000 to her older brother 18 months ago. My name doesn't matter. I'll just call myself Dana for this story, and I'll call my brother Colton, because that's close enough to who he is without giving away anything that could get either of us in more trouble than we're already in. I'm 34. I spent 12 years as a physical therapist, then transitioned into owning a small chain of outpatient rehab clinics with my ex-husband before our divorce. The divorce was ugly, but the settlement was clean. I walked away with a paid-off house, a chunk of retirement savings, and $412,000 in liquid cash from selling my half of the clinics back to my ex. Colton is 39. Growing up, he was the golden child. Star athlete, valedictorian, the kind of guy who made our parents' friends say, "You must be so proud," every single Thanksgiving while I sat there with my B+ report card feeling like furniture. I didn't resent him for it when we were kids. I actually looked up to him. He was the brother who taught me to drive stick shift in a church parking lot, who beat up a kid in 7th grade for calling me a name I won't repeat, who showed up to every single one of my physical therapy school milestones, even when our parents couldn't make it. So when Colton came to me 18 months ago with an investment opportunity, I didn't see a con artist. I saw my big brother, the guy who'd never once let me down. He told me about a real estate deal. Not just any real estate deal, a pre-construction luxury villa development in a coastal town that was, according to him, about to explode in value because of a new international airport expansion. He had inside knowledge, he said, because he'd been consulting for a boutique property development firm for the past 3 years. He showed me renderings. He showed me spreadsheets with projected returns that made my physical therapist brain do a double take. 22% annual appreciation, he said, conservatively. I want to be honest with you all, because if I sugarcoat this, I'm not going to learn anything from writing it out. Part of me wanted to believe him because I was 32 years old, freshly divorced, feeling like my whole identity had been rebuilt from scratch, and here was my brother handing me a chance to feel like I was doing something smart and adult and impressive with the ashes of my old life. I wanted to be the sister who tripled her divorce money instead of the sister who just sat on it in a savings account earning nothing. Colton didn't ask for all the money at once. That's important because looking back, that's exactly the kind of thing a person does when they know what they're doing is wrong and they're testing the waters. First, he asked for $60,000 as a buy-in to secure a unit in the first phase of the development. I gave it to him. 3 months later, he showed me a bank statement, or what I thought was a bank statement, showing the unit's paper value had already gone up almost $9,000. I was thrilled. My own brother had just made me $9,000 in 3 months doing absolutely nothing. That's when he came back and said the real opportunity was in the second phase, the actual villas, not the smaller condo units. He said if I wanted in, I needed to move fast because his contact at the development firm was holding a unit for family only, off the books, before it went to public presale. He needed $350,000 more. I gave it to him in 2 wires over about 5 weeks. I remember exactly what I told myself while I was sitting at my kitchen table, clicking through my bank's wire transfer portal. I told myself that if I couldn't trust the guy who taught me to drive stick shift in a church parking lot, then trust didn't mean anything at all. For the first year, everything Colton told me lined up with a story I wanted to hear. He sent me photos of my villa mid-construction, tile work, a pool being poured, a kitchen with waterfall quartz countertops. He sent me a video walkthrough once that genuinely, and I mean genuinely, looked like something out of a luxury real estate listing. I showed that video to my mom. I showed it to my best friend. I cried a little, honestly, because it felt like proof that I had done one smart, brave thing after my divorce instead of just surviving it. About 4 months ago, Colton invited me to actually come see the property in person for the first time. He said it was almost move-in ready and that he wanted me to walk through it before the final punch list items were finished. He said, and I remember this specific sentence because it makes me feel sick now, "I wanted you to see what your money built." I flew out. He picked me up from the airport in a car I didn't recognize, a car that was way nicer than the beat-up Tahoe he used to drive. I noticed it, but I didn't say anything, because by that point I had built an entire narrative in my head where Colton was simply good at this, where Colton had a gift for money that I didn't have, and where questioning him felt like questioning the one person in my life who had never let me down. The villa was real. That's the part that still messes with my head. It wasn't some fake address or an empty lot. It was an actual, physical, 10,000 square foot villa on a gated coastal property with a pool, a guest house, a wine cellar, imported stone floors, the whole thing. Colton walked me through it room by room like a proud homeowner. He told me the paperwork listed the property under an LLC for tax efficiency, and that my name and his name were both beneficiaries of that LLC. He showed me a document with an LLC name and some legal language I didn't fully understand, and honestly, at that point, I didn't want to understand it. I wanted to enjoy it. I stood on that balcony looking at the water, and I let myself feel proud of my brother and proud of myself for trusting him. I stayed at the property for 5 days. Colton said he was staying there part-time while he wrapped up some other deals, and that eventually the villa would either be sold at a massive profit or the family would decide to keep it as a vacation property. He talked about the future with total confidence. He talked about maybe getting my parents down there for Christmas. He talked about renting it out for $12,000 a week during peak season and splitting the income with me. On the morning of the 6th day, I was in the guest house getting ready to head to the airport. I remember I was in the middle of making coffee, still in my pajamas, half watching the news on my phone, when I heard tires on gravel. A lot of tires. I looked out the guest house window and saw 6 vehicles rolling slowly up the driveway toward the main house. They weren't flashy. They were plain, dark-colored sedans and SUVs, the kind of vehicles that don't announce themselves but somehow still make your stomach drop the second you see them in a place they don't belong. Then I saw the vests. Windbreakers, dark blue, with yellow lettering on the back. I didn't process the letters at first. My brain was just screaming, "Police, police, police," before it even sorted out the actual word. IRS-CI, Internal Revenue Service, Criminal Investigation. I stood frozen at that window holding a coffee mug that was, I swear to God, still steaming, and I watched 8 or 9 agents fan out around the main house. Some went to the front door. 2 of them walked toward the guest house, toward me. My hands started shaking so violently that the mug just slipped right out of my fingers and shattered on the marble floor of the guest house kitchen. I remember staring at the coffee spreading across the white marble like it was the only thing in the world that made sense to me in that moment, because everything else had just stopped making sense at all. I want to walk you through what happened over the next 4 hours, because I think it's important for anyone reading this who has ever handed money to a family member without asking hard questions. 2 agents knocked on the guest house door. They identified themselves, showed me credentials, and asked who I was and what my relationship was to the property and to Colton. I was so scared I could barely form sentences. I remember one of them, a woman probably in her mid-40s with an incredibly calm voice, telling me to just breathe and answer one question at a time. They separated me from Colton immediately. I didn't see him again for almost 3 hours. I was walked to the main house, sat down at the kitchen island, the same waterfall quartz countertop I had been so proud of just days earlier, and questioned for what felt like forever, but was probably closer to 90 minutes. Here's what came out, both that day and over the weeks that followed as I hired my own attorney and started piecing together the full picture. The boutique property development firm Colton claimed to work for didn't exist in any meaningful legal sense. It was a shell entity Colton had set up himself, using a business address that was actually a UPS mailbox store. The villa was real, and it had genuinely been purchased, but it had been purchased almost entirely with money funneled from at least 4 other investors, including me. none of whom had ever actually received the ownership stake or return on investment that they'd been promised. Colton had been running what agents described to my attorney as a version of a Ponzi structure, using new investor money to make early return payments to earlier investors, like the $9,000 I thought I'd earned in 3 months, to build credibility and pull in bigger checks. The villa itself was never legitimately titled to any LLC that included my name as a beneficiary. That document Colton showed me during my visit was fabricated. My name appeared nowhere on any actual title, deed, or ownership filing. Every dollar I wired had essentially just been absorbed into Colton's operation, and based on what investigators found, a significant portion had been used for Colton's personal lifestyle. The car I didn't recognize at the airport, part of a boat he'd purchased under a different name, and yes, part of the villa itself. The reason IRS-CI specifically was involved, rather than just the FBI or local police, is that the investigation had started as a tax fraud case. Colton had apparently been dramatically underreporting income for years, and when investigators started pulling financial threads related to unreported income, they found the web of investor money, the Shell LLC, and what looked increasingly like wire fraud layered on top of the tax issues. My understanding now, from what my own attorney has told me based on court filings, is that this had been under investigation for close to a year before that morning I saw 6 cars come up the driveway. They had been building the case quietly the entire time I was flying out for a proud, happy tour of my villa. The worst 4 hours of my life were spent in that kitchen explaining, over and over to different people, that I was a victim, not a co-conspirator. I had to hand over my phone. I had to walk agents through every single text message and email Colton had sent me about the investment. I had to explain the wire transfers, show my bank records, explain where $412,000 of divorce settlement money had gone and why. I remember one moment very clearly, sitting there answering the same question for what felt like the 5th time, when I just started crying and said, almost yelling it, "I didn't know anything, he's my brother, I didn't know anything," to nobody in particular, just into the room. Colton was arrested that day. I was not arrested, but I was absolutely, without question, treated as a subject of interest until my financial records cleared me. I later found out that agents had also interviewed my ex-husband, my parents, and even the loan officer at my old bank, all trying to establish whether I had any knowledge of or involvement in the scheme. That part still makes me feel a specific kind of sick, knowing that people I love were pulled into rooms and asked whether they thought I might be a criminal. It's been 4 months since that morning. Colton is currently out on bond, awaiting trial on multiple federal charges including wire fraud and tax evasion. I have not spoken to him since the day it happened, not because I don't have feelings about it. God, I have so many feelings about it, but because my attorney has told me, in no uncertain terms, that any communication between us right now could complicate my own position as a witness and as a victim in the case. The villa has been seized as part of asset forfeiture proceedings. My understanding is that whatever value is recovered from selling it, and any other seized assets will go into a restitution pool for victims. But my attorney has been very direct with me that I should not expect to see anywhere close to the full $412,000 back. Realistically, based on how these cases usually go, I might see somewhere between 10 and 30 cents on the dollar. And that could take years to actually materialize. My parents are devastated in a way I don't think either of them will ever fully recover from. My mom keeps asking me, almost daily, whether there was something she could have done differently raising us that led Colton down this path, and I don't have an answer for her because I genuinely don't think this is about parenting. I think this is about a person who, for whatever reason, decided that the people who trusted him most were also the people who were easiest to take advantage of. The hardest part of all of this, harder honestly than the money, has been sitting with the fact that the version of my brother I loved and trusted my entire life may have never really existed the way I thought he did, or existed once and slowly turned into someone else without me noticing. I keep replaying the driving lessons in the church parking lot and the fight he got into defending me in 7th grade, and I don't know how to hold those real, good memories in the same hand as 6 federal vehicles pulling up a gravel driveway. I'm in therapy now, twice a week, which is something I never thought I'd need over a family financial issue. My therapist has helped me understand that what I'm grieving isn't just the money. It's the loss of a relationship I thought I understood completely. And honestly, that grief has been so much heavier than watching my bank balance shrink. If there's a lesson in any of this, and I've thought about this a lot in the middle of the night, it's that family is not a due diligence process. I did not ask Colton for a single piece of independently verifiable documentation the entire 18 months I was wiring him money, because some part of my brain had decided that asking my own brother for proof would be an insult to our relationship. I would never in a million years have handed $400,000 to a stranger, or even a close friend, without an attorney reviewing every document first. But because it was Colton, I skipped every single step I would have normally taken to protect myself. I don't know what's going to happen at trial. I don't know if I'll ever see meaningful restitution. I don't know what, if any, relationship Colton and I will have on the other side of this, assuming there is another side. What I do know is that I will never again let the word family be a substitute for a paper trail. And if you're reading this and you're about to wire a loved one a life-changing amount of money based on trust alone, please ask for the documentation you would ask a stranger for. It will not feel good in the moment. It might even feel insulting to whoever you're asking. But I promise you, it will feel a whole lot better than standing in a guest house in your pajamas, watching federal agents walk up the driveway toward the villa you thought you owned. Edit, a lot of people are asking why I haven't named the development or the location. My attorney has asked me not to include identifying details while the case is active, since I'm listed as a witness. I'll update this post if and when I'm able to share more once the trial concludes. Edit 2, to everyone sending kind words, thank you. I did not expect this post to be seen by this many people, and reading through the comments has honestly helped more than I expected it to. I'll try to answer questions where I legally can.